Audio Unleashed.
I should have thought of a really catchy intro for this. It's kind of my job, isn't it? It is my job. You're not the guy who does that. I do.
No, you're really good.
I'm the guy who builds the excitement. I'm the guy.
You're the hype man.
I'm the hype man.
Yeah.
So, well, this is Audio Unleashed, and we're here to talk about audio. We're very excited to be here. And
are we doing the whole "we're very excited" thing again? We're going back into we're going back into CES PR guy mode. That's like 2 episodes in a row, man. We're
playing the hits. We're very excited. We are actually excited to be here because we have some special stuff on this episode, and that made it more fun for us, and we hope more fun for the listeners as well.
I hope so too. What are we starting with, though?
So we're starting with an article from your favorite website, at least, not mine, but Headphone Sty, otherwise known as Headphonesty. We call it Headphone Sty because we think it's mostly AI generated or LLM generated.
Yeah.
And if you want to tediously explain the difference between those, please jump right in. But
it's a nitpick. It's a distinction without a difference. Let's just go there.
I actually genuinely do want to have a discussion with you about that, but not right now.
Okay.
So the article is called 12 Free Audio Tools That Expose Hidden Flaws in Your Audiophile Setup.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's an AI-generated picture of some dude looking at his iPad with a couple of, he's got, now in his living room, he's got Kef blades plus what looks like B&W 802s.
802s, yeah.
Whatever. like in the same listening room. That's a smart setup.
And they're behind him at that. So he's got dual surrounds.
I hope one of these tools will expose the hidden, quote unquote, hidden flaw in his setup. They go into a lot of computer programs and things that that are useful tools for people that are into audio. And you highlighted this for me, which is saying a lot because you really hate this website.
Hate's a strong word. I try not to hate anything, man, but
you revile this website.
I have a very low opinion of it.
You are appalled by this website. How's that?
I'm a hater. I drink the haterade.
Okay. But it's a lot of free programs that you can find, which are useful programs. And so we're going to talk about some of them. And so we are going to talk about these programs they have in here and our experience with some of them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're going to do what?
Then we're going to bring in our buddy Jeffrey Morrison for reasons that are as yet a little unknown. So I got a text from Jeff basically sending me a link to this Reddit thread and being like, I don't know if you guys want to talk about this, but if you did, I'd love to be part of it. Nothing gets me more hot and bothered than when you and Brent talk about music. And I was like, wait, in a good way or a bad way? And he ignored the question. So we're going to bring him on to talk about why he gets hot and bothered when we talk about music. And I assume we're going to talk about this Reddit post, but who knows, man? This is Jeff Circus. We're just his monkeys. So we'll figure that out when we get to it. But yeah, what do you want to talk about after that?
The next thing I'm very excited about is the Klipsch Pro Media Lumina review from PC Mag. And I found this when I was, so I tested the system for Wirecutter. And I was about to make it it's not a full-on pick, but it's we have a category called Worth Considering. And it's a product that's very much worth considering. And so but usually before I go in there, I'm like, did I miss something about this product? Let me see if somebody else reviewed it. And I'll go read other people's reviews. Not to change my opinion of it, but just, they might say, oh, well, if you look at the thing sideways, it starts making weird noises or something like that. Who knows what, right? Just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And so I found this review, and most of the reviews of this thing were pretty glowing. It's editor's pick for a lot of people. But I saw this review in PC Mag that was talking about how uneven the bass response is and all this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at this. And so I went back and listened to the thing again, and I went through it with, I guess I'm going to spoil the surprise here, but the new Audiophile Society speaker test disc, which we both worked on.
Yeah.
And there are tones in there that are really designed to help you ferret out problems in your bass response in your room or your speakers.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you know what? Let me actually I hadn't actually used the tones to test any speakers really, but although I used all this stuff for decades, so I knew what I was doing. But I'm like, let me actually just use the tones and run the test. I'm like, the bass response to this thing is really even. And so then you found another review of it from, who is this guy? CE Sphere.
Yeah.
Never. Anyway, you definitely found that through Google search or DuckDuckGo or something.
Yeah.
You're not a regular reader of this site.
No.
But he's got an in-room measurement in there, which does show a big bass dip. And so I ran some measurements on this system, and we can talk about that. But I want to talk about how this is just an area where reviewers go horribly wrong, is when they talk about bass response and they don't understand where the bass response of a system comes from and how their review process might really be unfairly criticizing these systems for a problem that's the reviewer's problem, not the system's problem.
Yeah, good point.
And then what are we going to talk about for our Patreon segment?
Then this is, I think this is going to make you reconsider what you throw in the idea board. So a little bit of inside baseball for people. Sometimes Brent and I will just throw things in the idea board for each other that it's like, we're in the idea board. We want the other one to see it. We throw it in there instead of emailing it. It's just a joke, whatever. It's not really something we're considering for the podcast, but you put this thing in here with a link that said purely for your own amusement. The picture says it all, and I was like, "Oh boy, what's going on here?" This is a review of the Reiki Audio Jundo Stream reference by Alan Surcom. Where the name alone should have tipped me off to something maybe not vibing with my view of the world. But what is this thing? What is the Reiki Audio Jundo Stream reference? It is a $4,350 1 meter network cable. It's an Ethernet cable, and it is a crazy, radical, different approach to Ethernet cables. And it even says at some point, like, here's how Ethernet cables work. This one takes a radically different approach because, of course, something that works for, I don't know, the entire infrastructure of the internet and every IT enterprise ever couldn't possibly be good enough for audiophiles, right? No. So, but I actually did. I know you just posted this in the idea board for my amusement, but I want to talk about it. I want to talk about, like, how should you approach reviews like this? Like, what are the first things I did when I pulled up this review to assess whether or not Alan Surcom actually understands anything about network audio? So we're going to dig into that. We're going to talk about why this review is just, I don't know, preposterous for so many reasons. I don't even know where we begin, but we're going to dig in and we're going to have fun with it.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. I like Alan Surcom, okay? But like, this just sort of, I like a lot of people in high-end audio, but some of the stuff they write is just doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like there's a different, you like me, but if I started writing articles about, I don't know, permaculture, despite the fact that that's something I'm becoming very interested in and reading a lot about, you probably shouldn't put much stock into my opinions on permaculture at this point because I don't have the experience. I haven't done the work. I have not built a permaculture environment. So you could like me all day long, and I hope you do because you're one of my best friends in the world, but that doesn't mean you should take anything I say about permaculture seriously,
Well, I probably would because I don't know what it is. So,
okay, good point. Anyway, we'll get to that. First, let's talk about.
I think permaculture is that like the Eagles?
No,
because they've been around for like 50 years and we can't get rid of them.
That's true. That's That's more like syphilis, though.
Okay.
Anyway, let's talk about headphone style, buddy.
Yeah. So you were the one who highlighted this article, although
Yeah.
I would have highlighted it too had I seen it.
I wanted to hate this so bad. I mean, I pulled this article up with the intention of just hating on it. And I still don't love the headline 12 free audio tools that expose hidden flaws in your audiophile setup. Well, most of these, no, they don't, right? But I'll say this is 12 free or free and open source software solutions that I think most people should check out. And I think they're going to help you in different ways. And I mean, I think maybe it would be valuable for us to just go through the list here and provide
Mhm.
some color commentary. You want to do that?
I think that would be great. Yeah. There's a couple of them that we probably aren't going to know anything about, I'm
Yeah.
assuming.
The
But that's
first
okay.
one is Auto EQ, and it's a
Mhm.
this is a GitHub project with 15,000 stars. So a lot of people are liking this, and it's very similar to other solutions that we've seen. God, I can't remember the name of them. I probably should have looked them up. But basically, programs that allow you to correct the response of headphones to make a
Mhm.
headphone sort of sound closer to something that is neutral, right?
Mhm.
There is a solution that I use in Reaper, which is the DAW that we use to produce this. It's
Yeah.
a plugin by Tone Boosters that is a big database of frequency response and impulse response corrections for a whole bunch of different headphones, and you can make them sound like any other headphone in the list, or you can make them sound like Harman Target Curve, either of the Harman Target Curves for headphones. But it's I don't remember, it's something like $50, and a lot of these solutions are hundreds of bucks, but this one is
Mhm.
free. And I
Yeah.
think if you're interested in sort of like maybe you like different headphones for different reasons, but you want to hear what they would sound like with a more neutral frequency response, but you don't have a lot of money to spend, well, this is a good one. It's free. You could download. Anybody can download any of these.
Yeah, and these are derived from actual measurements too,
Mhm.
which is important. It's not just somebody saying what they think the EQ curve for your headphones should be.
Yeah, so they draw the database comes from profiles derived from measurement databases including Oratory 1990, Critical, and Artings. So yeah, it's pretty good list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm kind of inclined to try this because I'm pretty happy with the performance of all my headphones, but why
yeah,
not?
yeah. Well, I find it's helpful well, I don't really have to do that anymore now that I'm using the AKGs, but like when I was using those, God, I can't even remember what headphones I was using that I think you actually gave me. It's like when
Mm,
I would use some headphone correction in our DAW to make a more neutral mix. It helped me, but with the AKGs, I don't really need it. But anyway,
yeah.
it's good. Next on the list is Room EQ Wizard,
Mhm.
which I think everybody should like. Can you? Is there a program to do CTA 2010 that's not Room EQ Wizard? Or is pretty much everybody who does subwoofer measurements use REW?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, the original routine was created by Don Keel, who's really kind of the guy who mostly invented CTA 2010. And it ran on Igor Pro, which was $1,000 piece of software that I had to buy,
Mhm.
even though the actual routine that Don created was freely distributed, at least among CEA 2010 geeks.
Yeah.
And so so a lot of people, I still use it, although I think that computer is probably pretty close to dead since it's like 13, 14 years old. No,
Mm.
15, 16. Um, but I switched over to Room EQ Wizard for that. You can also you can do most of the audio measurements of speakers and I guess headphones that you'd want to do. And also I use it mostly as an SPL meter because it's got an absolutely fantastic SPL meter in it that
Yeah.
is much more versatile than any handheld SPL meter I've tried.
Yeah.
Because it'll do it'll do, it has Z weighting, which a lot of them don't have, which means unweighted. Most of them just have A and C weighting.
Yeah.
It'll do LEQ, which is, testing the sound level over a specified amount of time, average sound level, which I use a lot. And it's a really, I use it mainly for that and for CTA 2010 now. But you can do, I've seen people, I've not done it myself. I don't think I have, but I know people who have done full suites of speaker measurements with this, quasi-anechoic speaker measurements, which is sophisticated stuff. And you can do it for nothing. And gosh, my Clio, which granted includes a box, a hardware box and things, that was, I think they sell them for like $3,500 now. So this thing does, and this, honestly, the CTA 2010 routine in Clio is nowhere near as good as it is in Room EQ with Wizard. So
and if you have Joe Mariano's Magic Beans program, you can actually output measurements from that before I think most people that are going to use that program are going to be using it to develop their room target curve to feed into Dirac or something like that. But you can take those measurements, drag them over to Room EQ Wizard, and actually see like your on-axis response, your in-room response, and the directivity index of the speakers you measured. Now, granted, it's not super accurate in the bass region because you're measuring it in room, but still, like if you generally want to know what a speaker is doing, above that region, it's a really great way to do it, man. I'm actually, with Soundstage, most of the speakers that I review, we then end up sending to the NRC for measurements. But occasionally there are times where it's like, Doug's like, man, if we reviewed this similar model or whatever, maybe time or expense or something like that, we just don't have time. We're not going to do measurements of this one. I'm thinking about starting to use Magic Beans and Room EQ Wizard just to have something that we can show people.
You should. Yeah.
So I would say everybody needs to download Room EQ Wizard. You're going to find something useful in it. Yeah.
And so next, Audacity, which I think, God, everybody I know uses Audacity on some level.
The first episode of the Soundstage Audiophile podcast that we did, I actually edited in Audacity, and then you were like, dude, you gotta get Reaper so we can pass these things back and forth. But that first episode I did in Audacity. So
it's an audio recording and editing program, and so it's basically a really stripped down digital audio workstation, although it's not that stripped down. You can do a lot of stuff in it, and there's actually still a few things I do in it that because I like the plugins in it, and the noise canceling plugin is just fantastic.
The noise reduction is actually better than Isotope's expensive denoise plugin.
It really is. Yeah. So I still use it for certain things, and it's free. It's on all my computers. So once in a while, it's like, I don't want to go grab my lab computer. I'll just use the computer I use for most of my work, and it's got Audacity in there. If I just got to do something to an audio file, maybe change it over to MP3, or maybe just edit it down to something, maybe cut it down to a minute from whatever it is, et cetera, et cetera. It's just really useful for that, and it costs you nothing. So.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I want to skip over the next two because I don't have a lot to say about them. I want to skip straight to FooBar 2000 because this is a program that we've talked about before. But I would say, look, a lot of people know that I have over the past few months been transitioning away from Windows to Linux, and for the most part, I think it is one of the best decisions I've ever made. But one of the three programs that I'm really, really missing from my Windows days is FooBar 2000. I don't understand why they don't have a Linux version. They've got an Android version. Android's basically built on the Linux kernel anyway. So, but FooBar 2000 is, in my opinion, best media player ever made. If only for the ABX comparator component. It's just you want to really get into, testing your ability. These people that say, "Oh, I could hear the difference between an MP3, at 320 and a high res every day of the week." You want to, put that to the test, prove it. Okay, here you go. Here's your tool. And that's just one of the things that makes FooBar 2000 great, in my opinion.
Yeah, I use it just because I've used a lot of these programs, and this one's actually easier to use than many, I think. And There might be some things some people don't like about it, but I find it to be really an easy way to play audio files just because it'll kind of eat anything.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's just, I have it on all my computers as well. And it just ends up, it's just one of those things that's always there for me and that I always end up using on a regular basis, even if it's kind of no big deal to me. It's just always there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What else you want to talk about in this?
Um, the last item on the list is a big one. Harmon's How to Listen. I thought it was really interesting that they included that here because this is not about finding flaws in your audiophile setup.
Yeah.
This is not finding flaws in your perception, or at least, sort of helping you understand how hard it is to sort of identify with pinpoint precision the things that can overall impact our perception of sound.
Yeah.
Um, it only works on Windows or Mac, and I can't remember, but is this the one? I think you need Java or something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, there's a link here to where I've had a lot of people ask me about the Harman, how to listen training over the years, and here you go. Here's a link to it. But you know what? That
Yeah.
brings it up an interesting point, and this is
Mhm.
something that we should have talked about earlier. We got an interesting comment from somebody on YouTube on the last episode
Yeah.
that sort of tried to accuse us of being anti-training. I'll just read it. So this is by a user named WKT Enbrook, or is it WK Tenbrook? I don't know. Sometimes these
Uh-huh.
YouTube usernames make me feel old, but this is the comment. I'm puzzled that Dennis and Brent seem to scorn the idea that training can help a listener be more discerning, that it somehow makes audio more elitist. This has come up a couple of times in a couple of their episodes. Tool Olive et al. Have done extensive work on listener training and employ it at Harman. Only persons with tested normal hearing can be part of the trained listener program, and Olive even posted some software to help with this some time back. They published studies comparing trained and untrained listeners. I tried similar training program posted on the web by Philip several years ago. Anyway, I think more reflection is needed on the topic. This is one of those things where I think people are maybe misunderstanding the nuance of what we say sometimes. This
Yeah.
was in response to when we were talking about LRAD in episode 73. Um, we were talking about sort of like a little high Q 1 dB boost and you can't hear it or whatever.
Mhm.
And I talked about the fact that like if somebody's identity is wrapped up in being a better skilled listener than somebody else, right? These
Mhm.
narcissism of small differences kind of thing. I could see that, but we've never derided actual training. What we've derided
No.
are the people who claim to be superior listeners, but have nothing to back that up, who would never go through any training of this sort because they would find that offensive that you would even, insinuate that they should go through training. We're taking shots at the people who are like, well, yeah, I know what a good system sounds like, and blah, blah, blah. Well, how do you know?
Yeah.
Well, I just do. Trust me, I'm an authority. I'm a guru. So, no, I mean,
Right.
come on, man. If you think Brent or I would look down our noses at listener training and the importance of the value of it, I think you kind of don't understand our position, man. That's
Yeah.
kind of the
I mean,
exact opposite of everything we stand for. We're against the people who claim to have, that skill without actually having done the work.
yeah, what we're opposed to is the guys who sit around in their underwear casually listening to audio gear and proclaiming that they're experts, which
Yeah.
brings up another reader letter or email that we have, right?
Oh, God. Yeah. So we talk about Mark Snyderman a lot. A few episodes ago, we did a whole segment on Snyderman's choice. But yeah, so Mark Snyderman left that comment on the episode where we were talking about, I think it was the same episode where I was comparing it to the sort of like white lily flower model of audio reproduction, where like I claimed that you can't really make a good buttermilk biscuit with anything but white lily flour. And the reason for that is low gluten content. It's just a different gluten content than most flours. But whatever. I had my technical reasons, but I didn't explain that. But Mark Snyderman called me out in the comments, and this is just one of the funniest comments I've ever read. He says, okay, I have to ask, Dennis, have you done a double-blind ABX comparison of white lily versus other flours? Or are you just sitting around in your underwear saying that these biscuits have more inner detail? Touche,
So great.
Snyderman. Touche.
So great.
That was awesome. Anyway.
Using our own words against us.
Yeah, I don't like to
Very
taste my own
skillfully.
medicine, man. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
great. But anyway, I don't know, man. I think we've said enough about this headphone style article, but this is kind of a stopped clock phenomenon. This is a really good post for them. The headline is clickbaity, doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't think the large language model that put this thing together really understands the value of these. I don't care. It's a good resource. It's a good list of links. We'll put it in the show notes. Go download all of these, guys. You will find something in here that you didn't know existed that you will be glad existed.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, well, let's take a break, go get some water, and when we come back, we're going to have our buddy Jeff Morrison with us.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back, y'all. And welcome back, everybody. This is Audio Unleashed.
Oh, that was pretty good.
That was pretty
Thank
good.
you.
I like it. It's a vibe, man. It's a vibe. So the voice that you just heard, as we mentioned in the intro, is our good buddy Jeffrey Morrison, who's been your most frequent repeat offender guest here on Audio Unleashed.
I am honored, sir. I'm honored.
I was going to call you a third wheel, but that's not very nice.
I'll take it.
So anyway,
I'll take it. It's fine.
What do we? So this whole your appearance on this episode of Audio Unleashed started with a text that I got from you to this Reddit post, and the Reddit post was from r/Zennials. Basically, the title of it is "Have you been listening to the same music for 30 years?" And we'll get to that. But what's interesting is there was a little postscript to this text. So the text says, "I'm not sure if you ever want to discuss this as a topic on the podcast, but if you did, I'd love to be part of it." And you put the link, and then you said, "Nothing gets me more hot and bothered than when you and Brent talk about music." And I didn't really dig into that too much. I was like, in a good way or a bad way? And you dodged the question. So I just have to ask, in a good way or a bad way? Why do you get hot and bothered when we talk about music, sir?
Yeah. So I love you guys and I love the podcast, but the only topic that you guys cover that is kind of fingernails on a chalkboard for me is whenever you start kind of complaining about modern music. And the conversation always just kind of goes in a circle with, Brent saying all modern music is bad. And then
I don't say
Dennis,
that.
you're like, oh, but these new bands are great, but they all sound like bands that came out in the 70s. And like, I know both of your music tastes are broader than that comes across, but that's how the conversations feel when you're talking about them on the show. And then at the end, there's always like a 10-minute rant about how Taylor Swift is bad, which kind of comes across.
I don't say that.
It's an interesting take from, two middle-aged guys kind of complaining about Taylor Swift. I always felt like it was kind of a bad look because it's like, who cares?
I don't have a problem with Taylor Swift. I just don't understand Taylor Swift. I don't get
it's not for you.
Whatever.
She's not writing music for you. And it's kind of like complaining. It's like, oh, this toasted Wonder Bread is so boring. It's like, yeah, of course it is. It's not for you. Put some beans on it or Marmite or switch to sourdough or something. Like,
Marmite.
Anything. Because like complaining about Taylor Swift is just, it's so kind of trite and boring. It's like, you're complaining about someone painting a house white. Like, who cares? It's like, yep, there it is. It's a thing that exists, She's got some good songs. She's got some boring songs, like whatever. So I don't know. That was kind of my complaint on it was the broader thing, and what I was always yelling at my radio and or headphones was kind of, there's so much good music now, and it's so easily accessible that to focus on one artist or one thing in general and just kind of have this broad, popular music, pop is so boring. It's like, well, that's one small genre to this larger musical world. And it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Good example, Music Radar did this study. They found that, and this was in 2024, and they found that more new music was released every day in 2024 than all of 1989. And, I find new music all the time. There's probably once or twice a week I find a new band that I like, or at least a song or two that I really like.
Yeah.
So,
I would agree with you on that. I mean, I talk about a lot of that I try to talk about it in the podcast, but I certainly talk about it in the stuff I write. So, but that text that I got from you earlier today, like, what's that band that you keep talking about? Yeah, I didn't know if you were talking about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard or Krungbin or what, like which band. So I don't know, man. Maybe we just, maybe we're given the wrong perception. I feel like,
this would be good. This would be a good way to talk about that, and that the King Lizard. Brent can't say it either, so I don't feel too bad. But I mean, that's a great example where that's a band that sounds like. I mean, they have a lot of different sounds. I appreciate that, but they predominantly sound like they came out in a different era, and that ties into the Reddit post that I sent you, which was, do you think your musical tastes solidified at a certain age? As in, do you still listen to the same music you listened to as, let's say, a teenager?
No. I mean, I do listen to that music still, and that's still my favorite music, I think. I mean, I recently wrote a couple of articles about my all-time favorite albums, and most of it came out before I was 35. But what's funny is that's maybe half of what I listen to, and the other half of what I'm listening to is stuff that's trying to push me into new territories. I think the problem is I love a lot of the new music that I'm discovering. I'm positive. I wanted to go see Aurora's new concert film so bad, but it's not playing within 2 hours of here. I'm utterly obsessed with her, and I just discovered her a few years ago. My problem is I think I've reached the point now to where none of that new music is going to end up on my all-time favorite list of albums. That's where I am. I love the new stuff. I love exploring. I love finding new things. But I think at the end of the day, probably my top, 50 list is locked in stone from this point on out.
And do you think that is common? Do you think it is common to have that solidified? Or do you think, let's say, as musicians, that we are more likely to find new music or want to find new music? Whereas if someone's not a musician, that they might settle in on a specific genre or a group of bands that that's all they ever listen to again? Because I couldn't imagine that. Like, I listen on random on any music streaming service just to find new stuff, and occasionally I'll listen to playlists that I've done, but predominantly I'm trying to find new stuff. That's the dopamine hit for me. If I start listening to the same songs over and over and over again, they kind of get burned out, or I get burned out on them, and then I don't want to hear them anymore.
Yeah.
So, but I know people who they just have one playlist, with, let's say, 100 songs on, and that's all they listen to.
So can I share
Absolutely.
a fact with you guys?
Please do.
As far as the relevance of Taylor Swift, who I only criticize because her vocals are comped and compressed to where they don't sound human. But I never enjoy that. It's like AI. But traffic fatalities in the U.S. rise 15% on the day that a new Taylor Swift album is released.
Correlation is not causation,
not making that up.
Brent.
What is going on there?
That is fun,
Seriously?
though. That's a fun fact.
Okay.
I guess where it's coming from me, and what I want to push back on is not specifically Taylor Swift. It's something that was pointed out to me a number of years ago that has really stuck with me, is that as a society, there is nothing that we hate more than things that are liked by 12-year-old girls. And we are maybe not entirely complicit in that, but I mean, people who look like us certainly are, because this was predominantly, music journalism has all long been a guys' club, as most of these things are. And if something came out that it wasn't for them, if they're good at their jobs, they would say, "Oh, this isn't for me, but it's good." But a lot of them don't look at it that way. They're like, "Oh, this isn't for me, therefore it's bad." And so we start piling on, and just has all sorts of other society things that pile onto this as well. But if you look back of, Taylor Swift or Twilight or, all the Spice Girls or any of these things, they were ridiculed by people who look like us, but those things weren't for us.
Irony, I literally just made my wife sit down and watch Spice World for the first time the other day. Seriously. And she's like, "You enjoy this?" I'm like, "What is not to enjoy, man? It's the Spice Girls. I love this crappy movie." So
I had a Spice World screening party at my apartment in New York.
Nice.
I had my jazz group played Spice Girls tunes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that,
I don't have any problem with all this stuff.
But there is a broader movement against these things. And that's changing because there aren't as many gatekeepers anymore. There isn't, two dudes at Spin deciding what, is the it thing that year. This is
True.
TikTok,
Yeah.
Millions of people on TikTok or Instagram or wherever, or YouTube. And it's like, "Hey, here's this artist I found," or, "Hey, here's this whole community who loves this one artist." And people who like that type of music or that artist or whatever, they can find these spaces for them to be in and enjoy these things without kind of being ridiculed by society at large, which, there's a whole thing here I'd probably make more sense in writing it down. But I mean, it is, I'm a writer. I don't talk the goods. But it's you guys are the ones that are talking. But it is just, it's a broader thing that I tend to bristle at, because once I noticed it, and once I noticed that as a trend, that it was like, "Oh, this is, someone should have pointed out this to me when I was 20." And I go, I'm like, "Oh, maybe I would have been less dumb about things," Probably not. 20-year-olds are dumb, but myself, definitely. So I don't know. It's just yeah. But to tie it back in of like, how much of these things were set when we were teens to like these things? How many people have their tastes solidified at a certain age and don't look for new things?
Well, almost everybody. I mean, there's an old saying in music programming that, you take whatever demographic you want to reach, right? And you take the year they were born and you add 20, and that's the music you play.
Interesting. There was a joke that went around on I think it was on Reddit, where it was, when I was a kid, the music in grocery stores was terrible, but not like today. Now that I'm adult, they play nothing but bangers.
Yeah, pretty much.
I heard Emerson, Lake and Palmer in my grocery store a while back. And like nobody, when I was a kid, I mean, it was popular, but like very few of my friends in high school listened to that. It's like it became popular over the years, and it's kind of nice, but it's disappointing to me. It's disappointing to me that where was I? I was at a sandwich shop up in Anacortes, Washington, over the weekend, and they were playing, it was like real classic rock 70s stuff. I'm kind of like, I guess they want to reach people in their 60s.
Yeah.
And it seems very strange to me, but although I think in that case, it wasn't a conscious business decision on their part. It's just like, okay, well, this is fine.
Yeah.
And I personally, I listen to new music all the time, but I get this stuff off of either KSER, which is the independent radio station up here in Everett, Washington, and truly independent. It's not Pacifica or NPR or anything like that, and then also from Cobuzz recommendations. And I find the Cobuzz recommendations are really good. And then also from reading, reviews of popular music, which I still do. And I mean, a lot of it, but I criticize the production more than I criticize the artists. I don't like the fact that there's no real instruments and that, like I said, all the vocals are comped and compressed to the point where they don't sound human anymore.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I hate.
I got a question then, which ties into one of the other articles that we were talking about, one by you, Dennis, is that, we, like I said, we're musicians. We do tend, I think, and other musician friends that I have back this up, that we are looking for new things. And I think there's generally a more openness to finding new music. And maybe the genres get set, as you age, but I think like not necessarily just the bands.
Yeah.
So my question then is, I guess I should back up. You posed a question in a recent article on Soundstage Access about, I think it was called Snyderman's Choice. Was that what it is?
Yeah, and that came from a question from a patron who basically asked us, like, if you had to choose, right? Do you you're limited to 100 records for the rest of your life, and you can listen to them on the best stereo system you've ever heard, or you have access to all of streaming, but you can only listen to it on a Bluetooth speaker. And I sort of posed that question to a lot of people that work at Soundstage, as well as other people like our friend John Higgins. And it's interesting that you've picked up on the thing that is in my article that I didn't really underline. That kind of like all of the people who were like, yeah, give me streaming and the Bluetooth speaker any day of the week, can at the very least make a cowboy chord. You know what I mean? It's like they at least own musical instruments, right. Whereas the people that, are more audiophile-y, and Tom Moon, who's my comrade at Soundstage Access, he's just basically admitted, like, I don't listen to anything that was recorded after 1990. And it's like, no, not even any curiosity. And my thing is, like, if that's what makes you happy, then go be happy. You're not hurting anybody. But I couldn't comprehend that. I couldn't comprehend, like, no, I'm good. There's probably no new music that I'm going to like. I said before, there's probably no new music that's going to end up in my top 50 lists, maybe, because I feel like that's pretty full. There's a lot of inertia. But
do you think some of these things might just need a little fermenting? That if an album came out and it's great, maybe in a couple of years you go, hey, this is great. And then a couple of years after that, you're like, you know what? Actually, this is amazing. And all of a sudden, it's now 5 or 10 years old, but now it's on your list.
Look, if I live another 15 years, which is not looking super likely, but if I do, then I think it probably at some point Aurora's What Happened to the Heart is going to end up in my, top 25 or something like that. But yeah, I gotta spend a lot more time with it. I think it just takes time.
I agree. So I think it's not so much the age of or when the album came out, but also just kind of how long you've been listening to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and when I've talked to people in my life with that and asking them that same question, there's been I've had some interesting responses as well. Like my friend Alex kind of pointed out, like 100 albums that's a lot of music. That is a fair amount of music. But all of them kind of had the same reaction that I did. My reaction was visceral. I was like, immediately, it was like, no, streaming with a Bluetooth speaker. Like I couldn't fathom being limited. I definitely think people should read your article. There's some really good responses. John had had a great response in there. About kind of
absolutely
experiencing the world. I sent him a message about it. Like that was a good take, man. Hot take.
Yeah. Hey, Brent, what's your most recent favorite album? Like, what's an album that is like in your, let's say, top 25 list that came out in the past, I don't know, whatever length of time?
Actually, my favorite recent album is Plaid Pants by Cyger and Butterburger.
Well done, sir. Well done.
That's fantastic. A banger. Yeah.
I have been listening to, there's an artist named Eric Bibb who just put out an album called One Mississippi, which I think is really good. It's within the genre of what he's been doing for a while. There's a band called Bitchin' Bajas, which is electronica, which I found out about because of Cobuzz recommended. And it's really good. It's good to listen to on the when you're on like the massage chair at Planet Fitness. I got all kinds of junk in here. Because I listen to a lot of, I play in bands and stuff, and so I have to listen to stuff people want to play,
Yeah.
And some of it is like jazz stuff that goes back decades that I have not. Makaya McCraven is always really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Jazz artist, more or less. Yeah, so my list here is a mix of old stuff that people want to play and new stuff that I'm interested in. I keep trying to listen to Mary Halverson, who's like a hotshot jazz guitar player now who's kind of winning all the polls after being out for, I don't know, 15 years at least. And I still can't understand what she's doing.
Mm.
But I listen to it's all sorts of, and this guy Thorbjorn Rissiger. I think he's from Denmark, but he's got like an American blues kind of vibe, and he's got a great voice.
Yeah.
So I sort of, I'm sort of there's just so much on my list here that's new, mixed up with, God, I hate to even say, but because you guys would probably be appalled.
Would you say that
it's some of the stuff I play with bands.
Would you say that these new tracks that you found, would you say that they are all within a similar genre that you listened to, say 20, 30, 40 years ago? Or have you expanded the number of genres that you've listened to compared to that?
No, because I guess I've gone into different genres. I mean, I listen to a lot of jazz, and I always have, but jazz keeps changing. The jazz that's out there now is very different from what was out there 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is what I started on. And, this whole Americana sort of bluesy thing was in its embryonic phase when I was a young man. I mean, there were a couple of artists kind of nudging at that a little bit. But now it's kind of a much bigger deal. And there's more, there's more. I mean, Eric Bibb is American, but he's lived in Europe for ages. And a lot of it comes out of Europe now. Weirdly, these guys singing about, train stations and stuff like that.
Europe definitely has a lot of trains.
Countryside. Well, I know, but this is like the train station where the train's like blowing all kinds of steam out and things like that. And has a loud whistle and things like that. The old, Clarksville, Last Train to Clarksville, which granted was a pop tune, but like, the trains from back then, they talk about, countryside and things like that. And it sounds like somebody's writing about an America that either no longer exists or is mostly forgotten and maybe never existed. Who knows? Although I do remember it. I rode those trains that were kind of, like they didn't blow steam. They were all diesels, but, sort of the old school trains, I rode when I was a kid. I took the train from New Orleans to, like Memphis or something. That sounds like a good song.
I mean, I'm sure that's several songs, yes.
But I actually did that as a kid, and I still remember it,
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of this stuff is coming out of Europe. It's very weird, and but it's great music. I highly recommend. The new Eric Bibb album is just great.
Yeah. What's interesting is like, and this may seem like a little bit of a tangent, but it's not. So a bunch of people at Soundstage wrote articles about their favorite albums of all time, and our editor, Gordon Brockhouse, made a comment to me. He's like, "Look, man, there's just a lot of old people's music on here. Like, you're the only person who's got an album released in the past 10 years. Like, maybe you should go talk to like the young people in your life and like what would they say are their favorite albums of all time, best albums of all time." And what's funny is I've had I have not started doing interviews for this article, but I am working on an article, and I've gotten top 5 lists from like my son-in-law and a bunch of like sort of the young people that I organize with. And what's funny is like my son-in-law is 31. He could only think of one album released in the past 10 years that would make his list. But a lot of the young people, like they are throwing artists at me that like I've just never heard of. And you look at them and they're not cracking in the top whatever on Spotify. I mean, I get excited when there is like my young commenter Haley was like, "Oh, Wet Leg's first album." And I'm like, "Oh my God, Wet Leg! I love Wet Leg so much. That album's so
I
great."
like Wet Leg.
Yeah, but
it's pretty good.
But that was like the least obscure record that any of these kids gave to me. And one of the things I want to talk to them about when I do the interviews is like, how are you finding the music that you're listening to? Because it's obvious to me that like it ain't top 40 or top whatever, top 100. I mean, there's just some really obscure stuff. The only two other artists in all of these lists that I've ever even heard of are Bad Bunny, and one of them had a Doja Cat album on her lists. And I was like, oh, I've heard Doja Cat like for Brent, right? All of the other stuff, all of the other albums they're listing, like you go look at the top streams from Spotify or Apple Music or any of them, and they're just not on there. So what I want to know is like, how are they finding their new favorites? How are they finding the bands that they're in love with? Because it ain't from the algorithm. I can tell you that.
I wonder how much of this is, you still have these popular artists. You still have, Charlie XCX or Taylor Swift or whoever, and they're getting all of these streams. But that's not, most people probably aren't just listening to those artists. They have their own. And so from there, because there's so much more music now, it all fractures. It going back to use an old web term, like it's the long tail of these things that you have these people who's like, maybe this artist was only getting 10,000 streams or 20,000 or 100,000 or whatever, but those fans adore that artist. And now that, all of these fans, and they also like the popular one, but they're listening to all these more more varied artists, because there's also so many more artists. So none of them are going to have the numbers that Men at Work had, or whatever from the 80s or 90s or wherever, because there's just so many more artists to fill the various niches that people are looking for, which is great. I think that's a good thing. I wish they'd get more money for doing these things, but at least these things are out there.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we've probably rambled on enough about this topic, unless either of you fine gentlemen has something more to add.
I've done my rant, so I'm good.
No.
Brent, do you feel properly scolded?
I don't care. I'm too old. I'm too old to care about what people think. I got to live my life, and I'm going to listen to the music I like, and I'm going to spend the last years of my life, enjoying the things I love and not caring about what other people think.
You just described the paradox of cool, man. You're cool because you don't give a shit about being cool.
But, to Jeff's point, there is a ton of new music out there, and a lot of it's really good. And I don't want to say new artists suck, but I will just say that, like so many other things, and it's something we haven't even talked about, is AI, which is going to make things much worse.
Yeah.
I mean, when you've already got maybe half of all the stuff that's being posted now is AI on the streaming services. It's at least a third.
It's going to make it harder to sort through the wheat from the chaff, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually I didn't read it, but I saw the lead of an article in the New Yorker about how Jaron Lanier, the guy, he was like the VR guy, was saying that, maybe we're going to move towards a future where entertainment is not like you consuming stuff other people have done, but more like the model will be you telling an AI to make something for you.
I'd rather eat glass.
And then you watching it or listening to it. Well, that's maybe, but we're old, and even you guys are old. And
how dare
so just a thought. It's not an appealing thought to me, but nobody cares what I think anymore unless it's maybe about speakers.
I mean, to be fair, you have a successful podcast, so clearly some people care what you think.
Yeah, we have like 1.1 thousand listeners.
Pretty good. That's not bad.
We should go on tour. We should go on tour, Dennis.
Heck yeah.
Audio
like
Unleashed
they do that
live.
Like Ira Glass.
You should totally do that.
Yeah.
Pick an audio show. You're going to do a panel.
We might
Audio Unleashed.
Might get 5 or 6 people there.
We would pretty much
great.
just have to gate crash an open mic, I think.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you for coming on to scold us about not liking Taylor Swift.
Always a pleasure.
And,
Always. I'm going to be very curious to see how you cut this, because the last time I was on, you made it seem like I liked the Eagles.
No, sir. You made it seem like you liked the Eagles.
That's the story we're going with? All right. Sure. Hey.
Yeah.
I don't know who's mixing and mastering this episode, but I'll be curious to see. This segment is going to be like 30 seconds long. You're just going to cut it up, and then it's just going to be me saying in different tones of, I love Taylor Swift. Oh, no, man, I don't even need to cut it. I just gave it to you.
You're going to sound like Max Headroom, man.
Yes.
All right. Well,
thank you, gentlemen.
Everybody.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Everybody, we'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And we are going to talk about a great many things, all of which have to do with the bottom 3 octaves of sound. 3 or 4, somewhere in there. Basically, I was reviewing this Klipsch Pro Media Lumina speaker system. It's a 2.1 system. It's a subwoofer, 2 satellites. It's more or less a computer audio system. It's kind of designed for gaming. It's got built-in lights, which I guess you gamer people like that sort of thing.
I don't, but I'm not a... I've said this before. I play a lot of video games. I probably consume... Most of my media consumption, I think, is gaming, I would say. Mm-hmm. Well, no, probably most of it is music, and then next is gaming, and then movies and TV. But I don't consider myself a gamer. It's just another form of media that I appreciate. So I'm not into the whole gamer culture stuff. I don't do the RGB lighting in my computer. So
Anyway, this is a long-awaited update of the original Klipsch Pro Media THX system. It's been kicking around for, 15 years at least. And so this is a higher end version. It's about, I think it's $379 and got built-in lighting. It's got, it is a huge upgrade from the old system, which only sold for like $150 or something.
Oh, wow.
This is a huge upgrade. It's got a pretty big, let's see, I have the subwoofer right here. I think the subwoofer is like a 6.5 inch. It is, but it's a really high. It's a
6.5, right?
Yeah, it's a really high excursion 6.5 inch sub. I mean, it's a really high quality driver,
and it's ported.
It is, and the satellites are really like they're Klipsch, little things with about a 3.5 inch woofer and a horn, of course, because it's Klipsch. And I listened to these, and I was like, oh, I really like this. $379. It's a big price increase, but it is a much, much, much more advanced system. And so I was about ready to make it a wire cutter, not a full pick, but like a worth considering pick. And it probably it might deserve to be a full pick. I don't know. It's just we've already got a lot of picks in there I didn't want to displace. So anyway, I was like, well, this is good. But you know what? I'm going to check. It's a pretty complicated little system. There's a lot going on there. I'm going to check and make sure there's nothing that I missed. There's something, maybe some gaming dude found that the sub blows up when he plays Call of Duty. So I just went and looked at a couple of reviews, and I found this one from PC Mag. And I was kind of like, and it was really a pretty negative review. And that's fine, by a guy named Mark Knapp. And that's fine. If people want to have a negative review, different opinions of a system, and there may be people that don't like the sound of it or whatever. But then I saw like the reasons why, the bass and sub-bass deficiencies, even with subwoofer. And it was even like right up in the headline, surprisingly uneven bass mars this 2.1 speaker system. And so my alarms started flashing, so to speak. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I've reviewed a ton of subwoofers and all sorts of speakers, and I've done a colossal amount of subwoofer measurements and colossal amount of speaker measurements. And I'm thinking like, I wonder if this guy actually understands that, bass is affected by your room and your surroundings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because this is a common problem with subwoofer reviews, things like that, is people find problems that are actually related to the room acoustics, not to the product, because the product, the measurement guys will look at the product and go, measures fine, it's clearly working fine, except, it didn't work for you, but that's because of your room acoustics. And so I ran measurements. I think I had only done CTA 2010 on this thing, and it has a lot, actually. It's got a shocking amount of output from 40 to 63 hertz, but then it just falls off. That's the average. It just falls off a cliff below that. But it doesn't, what are you going to do? It's not a very big subwoofer.
Yeah.
So, fine. And the whole thing sounded good. And I listened to it. I listened to it with the test tones from the Audiophile Society speaker test disc, which is coming up maybe this month. I can't remember. But I'm working on it with David Chesky, and you worked on it, of course, too, doing the VO for us.
Mm-hmm.
And should be out pretty soon. And it has a lot of test tones that are specifically designed to test things like this. I listened to them, and I was like, boy, it sure sounds like it's working fine. I ran measurements on this thing, and, so I close mic the woofer on the satellite speaker, and then I close mic the woofer on the subwoofer. And what that does is it allows you to see exactly what the response of these drivers is without taking room acoustics into consideration, right? You're shoving the mic a quarter inch from the speaker. You're running a quick sweep at low levels, right? And you can see what the crossover design is in there. You can see exactly what it is, and you can see how smooth the bass response really is when room acoustics aren't taken into account. And I looked at that, and I shared it with you too. And they specify the subwoofer at 150 hertz, or the crossover at 150 hertz, which is a little high for a subwoofer crossover. That's where the subwoofer is going to start to get directional.
Mm-hmm.
Up at 150 hertz, you can kind of start to tell where it's coming from, except this thing's going to be sitting under your desktop anyway.
Right.
So that's what it's designed to do. So the directionality isn't really probably shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
And even when I listened to it just as a plain old stereo system, not under my desk, just in my listening room, sounded fine. I didn't localize on the subwoofer. And but it's, I measured the crossover point was at like 149.1 hertz. And,
wow.
It was right on. And, the two drivers, that when you do a subwoofer crossover, typically what you want to do, assuming the slopes are the same, which they appear to be in this case, is, the crossover point should be minus 6 dB on both the subwoofer and the main speaker. So that way it sums to flat. Okay.
Yeah.
Assuming all other things, equal. And so I measured it. It's perfect. It's perfectly executed. It's textbook execution of a subwoofer crossover. And so it made me realize, and then you found another measurement that was done by, who was that guy?
Oh gosh, who was it?
CE Sphere.
CE Sphere, but I don't remember the author's name. Let me scroll
the guy's
back
name
up.
is Eric Wesley.
Right. Yes.
And so he did a measurement. He did a really glowing review of the product.
Mm-hmm.
So he liked it, but he did an in-room measurement of the system that shows a pretty big dip at what is it? At about the crossover point.
About the crossover point.
But he doesn't tell you how he did the measurement. And it doesn't look to me like he averaged. The way to do an in-room measurement is you average a bunch of different measurements, right?
Mm-hmm.
That way you mostly eliminate the effects of, you minimize the effects of room acoustics. It doesn't look like he did that here, because if you had the sub at a much different distance from the speakers, right? Or in other words, if the speakers were 2 feet from you and the sub was several feet away, right?
Mm-hmm.
You might get a dip in the crossover region because the two might cancel each other out at certain frequencies, right?
Yeah.
Which happens with any kind of speakers like that, where you have different distances of the speaker. That's why, home theater receivers have a delay built in for the subwoofer, and you can set the subwoofer distance differently and all that kind of thing, right? Anyway, so that's unavoidable. The speaker, unless you put a control in there to set the to delay the subwoofer sound or the satellite sound or whatever, you can't get rid of that problem. It's a setup problem that you can fix with setup. Especially if you get the Audiophile Society speaker test disc, which is specifically designed to help you with this, and makes it really easy. If you have an SPL meter, you can use the SPL meter and absolutely nail it, but you can just use your ears too. But clearly I look at this and I'm like, okay, even if this guy averaged it, that should get rid of the problem. If he didn't average it and his subwoofer was at a substantially different distance from the microphone as the speakers, in other words, if he had the sub, the cables aren't that long on this thing, but if he was like right up on the speakers with the microphone and the sub was 3-4 feet away, you might get that dip there. But again, that's not the product's problem. The product is correctly designed.
I was trying to figure out what he used to do those measurements. So I did some reverse image searching to try to find something that would output with the exact same sort of aesthetic style. And it looks to me like he is using an iOS app called House Curve. And I'm digging through the documentation of House Curve now, and it will allow you to average measurements by tapping the plus and and taking a different measurement. So it at least has the capability of doing that. But I'm looking at other people who have used that averaging functionality, and it looks like you can kind of tell because you'll have multiple plots in it in different colors. So I don't know. I've been trying to figure out the software. At least we can say that the software will allow averaging. I need to look more into this app. Have you ever heard of House Curve before?
I've never heard of it, but he does show the target curve he's looking for, which is the correct target curve. And that's
actually how I discovered this app, because it's House Curve is the one that has that curve on it. That's actually how I discovered what the app was.
And that's fine. And actually, mostly this speaker conforms to that. But it doesn't seem to be. It looks like a smooth. It's definitely a smooth curve. It looks like 1/6 octave smoothing to me. But it's got this big dip in there that as I measured it, it's not in the product. That has to be a room acoustics or setup problem. Okay. Yeah. And this is why it's just such a, I'm so glad I'm retiring. It's so hard to do this because speaker measurements still aren't easy. Actually Magic Beans makes it pretty easy. Let's put in a plug for Joe there. Magic Beans is actually probably the easiest way of measuring a speaker that actually works, so you can use that. I probably should have used that and see what that gives. But, doing the speaker measurements the way I do them is really hard and requires, you could do it with Room EQ Wizard, but it requires a lot of knowledge, and you got to go build yourself a speaker stand that has a swivel on it and things like that. But, but it's really more the knowledge is the problem. It's a lot to learn. Yeah. And so, but to really evaluate a speaker system like this, you really have to, you got to dig in a little bit deeper. And I wish the guy from PC Mag had just, rather than, I wish he had realized, and every reviewer ought to realize this. If you're reviewing speakers, if in the bass, your room has a colossal effect on it. And before you go criticizing the bass, you should experiment with your setup. You can get the test CD that I keep talking about. Yeah. And I think it actually is going to be a CD as well as a download. So you can get that.
I'm wondering if it would have made a difference for them to just rotate the sub 90 degrees, honestly, given the design of
I
it.
don't know. I don't know.
Um,
I have to go calculate. Okay, wait. What's the bandwidth there, or not what's the wavelength? The wavelength is it's 150 hertz where they're having the problem. The wavelength of 150 hertz is about blah, 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 blah. Well, 2 feet. 1 foot is no 10 feet is 100 hertz roughly. So 5 feet is 200 hertz, right? So it's somewhere around 3.5, 4 feet
hmm,
is the wavelength. And so, yeah, you could, so if you take half the wavelength, which is what it would take to get a cancellation, yeah, you could have this thing 2 feet out of place and you can get a cancellation like that. But there's
yeah,
nothing that Klipsch could have done other than put some kind of delay circuit in there or some kind of auto calibration thing or whatever. And the delay circuit will require you to calibrate it, which probably the people that buy the system aren't going to do that.
yeah.
So it's like really Klipsch couldn't, there's nothing practical they could have done to
Hmm,
fix this. And it's also a problem that's going to happen with every other subset system that you have. It's just a matter of the wavelengths. And most of the little subset systems like this are going to have a subwoofer crossover around 150 hertz or something, right?
yeah, yeah,
So anything else is going to have this problem too, unless it's badly designed.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
something that has a big hump in the crossover region, which if you set it up right will sound terrible, might sound good if you have it set up to where you get a cancellation.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I don't take exception to some of his criticisms of this system because it has some big clunky cables. You will not believe this. The speakers, because they have all this rear RGB lighting in it, right? So
Yeah.
the speakers, one of the speakers, the cable is terminated in a DB9
Oh,
connector.
get out of here, man.
And
Get out of here.
the other is terminated in a DB15.
Oh, what the heck, man?
I kid you not. I kid you not. These cables are really thick too.
So basically it's a situation kind of like those Onkyo powered speakers whereby if you don't have enough, if the cables that they provide you aren't of sufficient length to get the speakers where you want them, you're just screwed. There's no way for you to sort of patch in another cable and extend the width of these speakers, right? So,
Well, yeah, you could go to you might be able to find like a DB9 or DB15 extender cable at Goodwill or somewhere.
yeah.
I don't know where you find it. So,
Wow.
it's maybe you could still find that on Amazon. I don't know. But
Probably.
or you could have probably found it at Fry's, but Fry's is no longer with us, sadly.
Rest in peace. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could probably find it somewhere, but the cables are reasonably long, and I didn't have even setting it up as a regular stereo system with the speakers 7 or 8 feet apart. I was able to do that.
Yeah, I think with the Onkyos, you couldn't get them 8 feet apart. I think it was like 5.5 feet is as far as you could get them. And it was like, come on now. That's a little limited, especially if you've got like a gigantic TV or something.
Yeah. So there's definitely some quirky things about this system. And I don't, if people want to criticize that, that's fine. And honestly, I find the system a little bit bright. I find a lot of Klipsch stuff to be a little bit bright, and certainly that guy's in-room measurement, however he took it, suggests it's a little bit bright. I didn't actually measure the full range frequency response of these, but they sound a little bit bright, but in a way that I was kind of like, gamers might like that. It's a little more perceived detail. And so I'm guessing at what happens in games here, so bear with me. But if there's like the sound of someone like sneaking up on you and they accidentally crunch a stick, like Han Solo did on the planet of the Ewoks.
Yeah, it was the forest moon, actually.
Yeah, the forest moon. Yeah, Endor, right. Yeah, whatever. Okay, moon. The moon where the Ewoks lived. And So if that happens, that would be like a sonic cue in a game that I would imagine would happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you play these competitive first-person shooters, you do sort of like a lot of the gaming headsets will have a mode that accentuates those frequencies, right? The very directional frequencies, because the difference between, knowing somebody's coming at you from the front right or the back right or whatever can be the difference between life or death, right? And so the spatial cues are very accentuated by those frequencies. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's a good voicing for these things. And honestly, with music, I thought it sounded great because, a little tiny little bit of extra brightness can be kind of nice. And it wasn't like a spike. It was like a gentle shelf up a decibel or two above, I don't know, 12K or something. So it was just a little extra air and, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, there should be... Somebody should write a book on how to review audio gear. And one of the things, that's one of the things you'd say is, hey, if you're having bass problems, there's a good chance the problem is you or your room. It's either the setup or your room, and you need to do things that will tell you if the problem is actually in the product or not.
Yeah. It's a good way of putting it.
And I got to say, I keep putting in plugs for this test thing because I'm excited about it, but it will let you do that.
Oh, very cool. Well, I think it's a pretty good place to end, man. I think that's a good note to end on. What you think? Yeah,
let's end there and thank Jeff Morrison again.
Yeah, for scolding us. That was nice of him.
Yeah, that was kind of nice. Everybody who criticizes us just doesn't understand.
Oh, we're so misunderstood, man.
I know.
We're misunderstood geniuses.
Yeah.
Maybe you are. I'm not. I'm just a dumb old man. So, all right, buddy. Well, this is, as always, a Butterburger production, which means it was us. It is my turn to mix, master, and edit and all of that.
Yeah.
Any other thanks or shout-outs or credits you want to do before we wrap it up and get on to the Patreon segment?
No, let's pull some archival music because I got a lot of recording to do with one of the bands that I play with, and I'm not going to have time to do anything.
Ooh, very cool. Exciting. What's the genre of the band you're playing with?
Oh, my God. It's kind of classic rock, but a lot of it's kind of like 60s protesty stuff.
Oh.
And, a lot of stuff like that. With some newer protesty
kind of
stuff.
Vibe or something.
Yeah, some of that. We're actually doing, what is that song called? For What It's
Worth. Yeah.
And we're also doing a more recent tune by Elvin Bishop, who you may be familiar with. He's an old guy, but it's a relatively new tune. And it's called Something Smells Funny Around Here.
Oh, nice. He's been hanging out around in my house, I guess. I don't know.
But good stuff. Anyway,
very cool.
So,
all right. Well, everybody, we appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. But patrons, stick around. We got one more for you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah, and so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/audio unleashed.
Or audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.